over the last week, we've done, was it 3 or 4 videos on the Baltimore incident, and we've had an awful lot of questions, comment statements. A lot of them are replicated. So what we do is we go through all of the questions, well, not all of them because there's thousands of them, but we go through an awful lot of them and we see a theme developing with certain things. We've written them down and we're going to go through and answer those questions as best we can based on the information that we have, based on knowledge that I have working on ships, based on also talking to other people, other professionals, people who've worked on these very vessels. And yeah, and like I said, AIS data, the live stream video footage, and the VDR footage based on what the NTSB told us. So we're going to go through and answer the questions as best we can. Hopefully we'll give you some answers. Obviously, this is all preliminary, as the NTSB said. You know, it's not like this is the conclusion, you know, and that's the end of it, because it's not. It's just the start of that recovery process, right? The NTSB are in the data collection phase right now. Everything they can download data from, that they'll get it and they'll put it all together. So anyway, we'll go straight in with the first question, and it's a big one. Why did it lose power in the first place? Well, obviously, that's the big question, isn't it? That's the question that everyone wants the answer to. We don't know is the short answer to that. But what I can do is I can tell you that when a ship is leaving a port, it's at its most volatile state, if you like. When a ship's at sea, it's more comfortable at sea, right? When it's heading down a narrow passage and it's maneuvering and stuff like that, the load on the electrical system on board is much higher than when you're out in deep sea. You have extra pumps on for steering, stuff like that. There's lots of different things going on, starting and stopping bow thrusters. The bow thrusters would have been shut off at some point as they headed down that channel. You know, service pumps, there's a powering up hydraulic equipment. All of this stuff is happening, and what happens at that point is when they're leaving, the vessel has 4 generators in total, I believe. It has 3 normal generators and 1 emergency generator. Now, in that circumstance, when they were leaving port, they probably had the emergency generators on standby, and they probably had 2 generators on. And as they leave, as they get into the channel and they start to shut down the bow thrusters and things like that, the extra load on the electrical system, then they should really keep on both generators till they get out, till they finish maneuvering, right? But there's always the possibility that the engineers decided to shut down one of the generators. Maybe they shut down the wrong generator. Maybe they needed 2 generators still, and they shut down a generator too early. If they turned off a generator too early, or they turned off the wrong generator, that's possible. Obviously, that would be human error. Other possibilities is that there's some sort of failure, with the fuel system, for instance. You have a lot of redundancy on a ship, but if the fuel is tainted, sometimes you get dirty fuel. If that's the case, then it affects all of the generators, right? If you've got 3 generators on board, they're all redundant of each other, but they all have the same fuel, right? If the emergency generator has its own fuel supply, then that might not have that. If they got tainted fuel and that fuel is not tainted, then that generator will kick in. But yeah, that's I know that's not the answer you're looking for there, but that's what I can give you right at this moment. So we'll move on to the next question. It says, what I don't understand is when they lost power the first time, why didn't they stop? Then you can see the boat power up and with exhaust coming out and turning right for the bridge. If they knew they had a problem, why would they turn towards the bridge? You can clearly see that in the video. If they would have kept going straight like they were, nothing would have happened. They would have had time to drop anchor and keep a catastrophe from happening. Well, first of all, how can they stop? If they've had a blackout, how can they stop? It's not like a car where you can just put your foot on the brake. It was moving at 8 knots when it lost power, and it's in the water, right? And in the water, there's all kinds of stuff going on. So, yeah, they couldn't stop. That's what they were trying to do. They dropped an anchor, so they were trying to do that. So when the vessel lost power, they lost the ability to steer. So the rudders are connected to the bridge, not by cables anymore. They're connected by what we call fly-by-wire, and there's a telemotor transmitter on the bridge, and then there's a receiver in the steering gear. Now you'll have two rooms on the ship. I don't know this configuration of the ship, if it's got two rudders or one rudder, but there's a steering gear room for each rudder, and you'll go down there and you can manually steer from there if you've got power, right? So emergency steering gear only operates when you have power, so you've got no steering. So that the transmission from the bridge, the telemotor generator, the telemotor transmitter, that's not working because there's no power. The rudders are not working because there's no power, so they can't steer. They would have had to send people to the emergency steering gear room to even if they were able to use the emergency steering gear, they'd have to send somebody to that room, and the room is at the stern of the ship. The ship is 3 football fields long. The bridge is probably what 2/3 of the way to the front. So let's say 2 football fields they have to run to get down there, assuming that they're in that area when they get told to go to the emergency steering gear. So they've got to run 2 football fields. So how long does that take? This is all happening within a couple of minutes. So assuming the backup generator kicks in, the emergency generator kicks in, that has to take 45 seconds. So let's say a minute, which is, going by the video footage, it's about a minute from lights out to lights back on. So in that time, there's no steering. So that's why they didn't stop. Okay, so next question. With respect, that ship had to have been turned to starboard. Losing power, that ship would have carried on straight under the bridge. So I don't know where this idea came from. I think it's obviously from people who don't know what they're talking about. There's no disrespect mean to anyone. There's a lot of people make assumptions based on their own experience, but they've never worked at sea. They don't know how things work, right? If the idea that a ship moving straight ahead, if you turn off the power to it, it will continue to move straight ahead, is false. That idea is false. The vessel is moving straight ahead because of the inputs, either from the helmsman when he's steering manually, or from the autopilot, right? If you've ever been on the bridge of a ship and you look at the autopilot unit, you can see the rudder moving constantly. Like it's showing you, it's going port, starboard, just to keep the vessel in a straight line. And the helmsman will be doing the same thing. He's constantly he's moving to the orders of the captain, right? The captain will be shouting out the position, and the helmsman is moving into that position, and that's how they keep the vessel straight. So once the power goes and the steering goes, the vessel's now adrift, right? It's drifting. It has no way to steer. Now, also, I will show you some footage that I recorded the day of the incident. It's a little bit later in the day, but it's the same day of the incident. You can see that there's a wind blowing in a south-westerly direction across the bay. The ship being pushed to the starboard side, right? But the wind's blowing in that same direction. The vessel's heading southeast. The wind's blowing southwest. Also, look at which direction the smoke is blowing from the funnel. Also, you've got currents in the water. If that pushes the stern to port, and the vessel starts to turn, and then the wind's pushing it the other way, then you end up, where you are. How do you explain that the ship was going straight during blackout and would have completely missed the pillar, but when the power comes back on, it's steering towards the pillar precisely? Well, I've just answered that question, haven't I? Based on the data we have, we've got the AIS footage, or the AIS data from marine traffic, and we've got the live stream video, right? If we look at that data all together, the vessel had already started to turn when the blackout happened. The vessel was already turning when the blackout happened, which just meant that they couldn't control it, and it kept turning to starboard side. So, okay, next question. I'm getting confused. Does power loss mean loss of propulsion or electricity to operate, for instance, steering, because there was smoke coming from the funnel? Okay, blackout means the ship is in darkness. The ship's only power at that moment is from the batteries a UPS, which I described in a previous video. It's a giant UPS system, giant 12-volt batteries connected in series to make up about 450 volts DC. When the generators fail before the emergency generator comes on, this UPS is meant to power emergency stuff, and also they have batteries to help them restart the engine and stuff like that, compressed air for the engines, but batteries as well. And that's that UPS system is designed to keep essential equipment on. The smoke coming from the funnel is it could be the generators restarting, the emergency generator kicking in. We don't know. Next question. Another question brought up: when did the Dali start to turn, before or after the power loss? Okay, I think I've already answered this question, but so we've got the AIS data, we've got some VDR information given us by the NTSB, as I said. So 124.59, various audio alarms were recorded on the bridge audio of the VDR. So there's problems. The VDR is recording the audible alarms, probably from the conning station and from the PMS, and the PMS is the computer that shows you what's happening with the engine and stuff like that. And then you've got the ECDIS and all that. They will all have gone into alarm because they've all lost communications with the things that they're controlling, right? At the same time, the VDR sensor stops recording, but they've still got audio, right? Now that tells us that the VDR is using its onboard backup power, which means that it's got no other power to use. So it should be plugged into the 24-volt UPS system that I described. If that's failed, then it's on its last resort of this built-in power supply. Now that power supply is only designed to run the audio. It runs its computer, because effectively it's a computer. It's in a steel cabinet. It's bolted to the floor, to the deck, or it's bolted to the wall in a navionics room or something. And it has a little display on the bridge, which I've got footage of the NTSB downloading data from. That is controlled from the power source from the VDR. It's got to control the fans in the VDR. It's got a float-free device which is up on the top in case the vessel sinks. It's got to send data to that. It's also got a fixed unit up on top as well, which can be recovered if the vessel sinks. They can't find the float-free one. It has to power all of that, and that's all it does. And it has to do that for 2 hours. So when there's no power, that's all that the VDR is doing. And this is based on, we got the instruction manual for the actual VDR from the company, and it says it in there as well. AIS data shows the vessel started to move to starboard at approximately 1:25 a.m. Now, that's based on what it says on the screen. It's not that accurate. It's accurate to the minute, but the track and stuff like that, it's not the best, but it's what we have to go on right now. So it appears that the vessel moved to starboard after the power went out, which makes sense in an accident. Now this is 1:26:02. VDR resumes recording. That means that the power's been restored. So probably the emergency generator has come on, and then now the VDR has gone back to recording sensor data because it's got power back, right? So Clay Diamond, executive director of the American Pilots Association, said that the pilot who was on board told him that he immediately ordered harder port. This as soon as they got the power back and they got helm control. He said harder port, left as you look forward from the bridge. If you're looking to the bow of the ship, port is your left. Now that lines up by the information given by the VDR. So the VDR, the NTSB gave us the VDR information, and it's 1:27:04. Pilot orders the Dali to drop the port anchor and ordered additional steering commands, which is probably him saying harder port, right? Diamond said that this is Clay Diamond again, widely circulated images showing the ship's lights turning off and back on were caused by the emergency generators turning the lights back on, but not the ship's propulsion. Okay, next question. It's been 2 days and still we are going with procedures and have not found out what caused that crash and are not on the verge of it. 2 whole days. The NTSB are in a collection phase, data collection phase, right? They're taking interviews. They've got to interview the pilots. They've got to interview the crew. They've got to download all the data, the VDR, the log reports from the engines, the engine control room, the computers, PMS system. They're going to take everything. Now, they already said in that press conference that the audio on the bridge is not very clear, so they've got to clear that up. So that's another thing that they've got to do. That's very early stages. They said that they also said in that press conference that it's going to be between 12 and 24 months before they have a final report. So, 2 days is nothing. Okay, next question. How is it the voice recorder equipment had a backup power source, but the data system doesn't? There is lots of redundancy on a ship, but it revolves around the generators running. And they're like on the bridge, for instance, the equipment on the bridge that will have its own UPS. You've got the 24-volt system on the ship, which I think might not have been working based on what's happened. I could be wrong, but that's my guess. Then on the bridge itself, the ECDIS units, all of the computers that are on the bridge, the ECDIS, the PMS system, the conning station, the VDR, they all have standalone UPSs as well. So what might have happened on the bridge, which sounds like from the VDR, when they said that they can hear audible alarms on the bridge, the generators are shut down, but they've got alarms, right? So there's power to whatever is making those noises. So it's probably from those standalone UPSs on the bridge. So the ECDISs are still on, but all of the radars have turned off, and everything's turned off, that the generators supply power to, and just left with these computers beeping. So yeah, that's what it seems like to me. All right, next question. Without the NTSB releasing the full audio, this is what they want the public to think. It's astounding that all of this was said on the audio as alarms are going off, engines off, no steerage, heading to the bridge. I think there would be far more audio. What did the captain say? Was he just sitting back, letting it happen? Okay, well, as I said, the NTSB said that the audio is muffled because there's beeping, and they can't understand exactly what they're saying. Now, the audio channels, each microphone has its own channel, so they can separate that information and they can play it back individually. I think there's 4 microphones on the bridge, up to 4 mics on the bridge, and 1 on each bridge wing. So there'll be 4 microphones on the bridge, so 4 channels of audio. When they play it back initially, it's just all playing all of it back. But they can separate all that. But they said they're going to have to clean it up before they can understand what was being said. So that's why we don't know, because they don't know. Yeah, and like I said, they just gave us a basic timeline of what they could discern from what they heard. The pilot was issuing commands. The pilot had control of the bridge, so the captain's not going to start shouting orders, because the rest of the people are going to be like, well, who do we listen to, the pilot or the captain? You've got to have one voice on the bridge. So the pilot was that guy. Next question. The 30-hour record was only introduced. It's not a question, actually. The 30-hour record was only introduced by the IMO through resolution and applied to VDRs installed after 2014. Dali was built before, so may have had previous 12-hour record. What I said is the VDR records 30 days of footage or data, and it has to by IMO rules, right? Now, I had quite a few comments of people saying I work on a ship and it only records 12 hours. This is what he's talking about here. In 2012, they changed it, but it didn't come into effect until 2014. Any VDR on this kind of ship has to record 30 days, on any ship, in fact, has to record 30 days of footage. Before 2014, it's 12 hours. So if your VDR where you work only records 12 hours, it's because it was installed before 2014. What we do know is that this model of VDR is called the JRC JCY-1900. We got that from the NTSB footage, and we've got the instruction manual for it. And I can show you the page where it says that it records 720 hours of data. That is 30 days. And it also says that it records 2 hours while blacked out, only bridge conversation. So next question. For me, one major question remains unanswered. Why did the 2 tugboats stand down before the Dali was safely past the bridge? Shouldn't a risk analysis have been identified the possibility of a power failure and made this mandatory? I think that's a great question. I already talked about it in a previous video. It seemed to be standard practice there. The tugboats would take out the ship from the port, get it into the channel, and then they would leave the vessel when they felt like the vessel was okay. I guarantee something. When they build a new bridge, they'll have apparently there was a shortage of tugs. I don't know. I can't confirm that. That's what I've heard. There won't be a shortage of tugs in future, and I guarantee that the tugs will take that vessel all the way past that bridge. Next question. Okay, this is kind of a continuation on some of the previous questions, but it says, why did the engines cut out in a blackout? A diesel engine doesn't need electrical power to run. A ship is not the same as your pickup truck. They don't generate electrical power, as you might think. People think the engine running generates the electrical power for the ship, but that's not what happens. The generators generate electrical power, and then all of the stuff, the ancillaries for the engine, is controlled by electrical power. Fuel pumps, water cooled. The engines are water cooled. All of the pumps that run all of that stuff. The engine room is cooled. You know, otherwise you'll get overheating and stuff like that. So all of that stuff is run by the electrical power. You lose electrical power, the engine. There's only one engine on this ship. The engine will shut down. It all needs to be reset when you have a blackout. So the diesel engine on this ship will not run without the electrical power. The next question, black smoke proves the engines were running. Well, it doesn't. What it proves is that approximately a minute after the blackout, an internal combustion engine of some sort started. That's what it proves. A minute after the blackout, emergency generator kicks in, right? So the smoke could be from the emergency generator. The very minute they got power on that vessel, and the emergency generator can control steering, bridge. You know, it supplies power to the emergency areas, right? As soon as they got that generator running, they would have been full load. They would have been turning things back on, steering harder port. You can the pilot said harder. As soon as he got power back, harder port, drop the anchor. You know, bum 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 bum. So yeah, that generator immediately when it started. The generator was probably being requested full power, right? Now, anyone knows when you start a diesel engine, when you first start it, you get this big pile of black smoke out of it. This is what I've referred to in a previous video. You get, because the engine's not at temperature, it's not running at its optimum temperature, so it's burning this fuel. And it's spitting out a lot of the fuel into the exhaust, and you get this black smoke, right? Because it's the diesel. Clay Diamond, American Pilot Association, he said that the lights turning off and back on were caused by the emergency generators turning the lights back on, but not the ship's propulsion. That's what he said. That's based on the conversation with the pilot. All right, next question. I find it odd this gentleman, that's me, is claiming the engine stopped. A single screw-driven vessel such as this would definitely round to starboard in full reverse, which is what it did. This guy knows, apparently. Maybe he's the pilot. The black smoke looks to me like engines going full astern. Right, lots of people talking about this full reverse theory. I know that Sal from What's Going On with Shipping suggested this in a video, and it's possible. It's a possibility that happens. They call it transverse thrust or prop walk. And the idea is that when the propeller is spinning in one direction, when you put the engine in reverse, the propeller starts to spin in the opposite direction, and it pulls the stern of the vessel. It starts to move it, and then the vessel does what it did in that, what you seem to see in the video, right? It's a possibility, but based on early information, preliminary information, as I said, none of this is conclusive. What Clay Diamond said is that they got the emergency generator running, but they never got the engines back online. That's what he said. Now, that might not be correct, but that's what the pilot apparently told him, according to the report that I've seen. The black smoke could be the emergency generator, so you can't make any assumptions, really. Next question. I would like to know why the power loss happened, and was negligence of the crew suspected? Well, now I'm rounding off here with the first question and the last question because it's because I want to go into it. What he says about the negligence of the crew. Now, I'm not casting any aspersions. I'm not saying anything. I'm not claiming anything. I'm just going on data, right? Which is what we can do at this point. Now, P&I clubs provide protection and indemnity insurance to ship owners against third-party liability and expenses. So if you hear P&I, it's a protection and indemnity insurance company, right? The London P&I Club, as it's called, they did a report, and they found the main causes of propulsion loss for memberships and for which P&I investigation was required during the last 5 years of investigations where a ship lost propulsion. Does not conclude anything about this incident. It just gives you an idea of all of the investigations over the last 5 years, right? 29% is insufficient or ineffective maintenance of equipment. 24% human error. 24% equipment failure. 17% fire. Well, we know there wasn't a fire. Well, we haven't heard any data that there was a fire. And 6% is other, or a combination of those three, right? Or something else. So like I said, we don't know. But there you go. That's the stats on the last 5 years of investigations by P&I Club London. So there you go. I hope you found this interesting. Let me know what you think. I'm sure this has generated as many questions as answers. So yeah, put your comments below, and we'll talk about it there. And yeah, maybe we'll make another one moving forward. I don't know. But anyway, thanks for watching. Be sure to like the video. Very important for the algorithm. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And yeah, stay tuned for future videos. All right then. Bye-bye.